Well, I'm Oliver, and I'm with my brake van towed. We've run out of coal and have no more steam. But what are you doing? Escaping. From what? Scrap.
One day, Edward was talking to Trevor when Douglas steamed by. He was pulling a train of heavy coal cars.
Come on, Edward. Stop gossiping in the sun when there's work to be done.
Later, Edward spoke to Douglas. Trevor and I are old friends, and you and he have a lot in common, too.
We do?
Quizzed Douglas.
And what would that be?
Scrap, said Edward quietly. Douglas gasped.
Don't mention that word. It makes me wheels wobble.
It does the same to Trevor, replied Edward. He was being sent to the scrapyard, but the vicar and I saved him, and now he's really useful again. Even so, Sir Topham Hatt certainly does need another steam engine here.
Aye, he does, and quickly.
That night, Douglas was still working. He had taken the midnight goods train to a station at a faraway part of the island where only the diesels work. He was just shunting, ready for his return journey, when...
That sounds like a steam engine,
he thought. The hiss came again.
Who's there?
Asked Douglas. A whisper came.
Are you Sir Topham Hatt's engine? Aye, I'm proud of it. Well, I'm Oliver, and I'm with my brake van towed. We've run out of coal and have no more steam. But what are you doing? Escaping. From what? Scrap.
Douglas shivered. Then he remembered Edward's story about saving Trevor.
I'll be glad to help you. It'll have to look, though, as if you're ready for scrap and I'm taking you away.
Their drivers and firemen agreed to help, too. Everyone worked fast.
No time to turn round. I'll run tender first. Come on.
But before they could clear the station, they were stopped.
Aha!
Called a foreman.
A Great Western engine and a brake van, too. You can't take these. Aye, but they're all for us,
said Douglas's driver.
See for yourself.
The foreman looked all over Oliver.
Seems in order. Right away, guard. That was a near thing. We've had worse,
replied Oliver, and they forged ahead. It was daylight when their journey ended.
We're home,
cried Douglas.
Shh, said his driver.
There are the works. We'll find a place for Oliver. Oliver said goodbye and thank you, and Douglas puffed away. The next day, Douglas told the other engines all about Oliver.
Sir Topham Hatt will have to know,
said James.
Douglas should tell him at once,
added Gordon.
Well, here he is, said a voice. Now, what's this all about?
Beg pardon, sir, but we do need another engine.
Yes, sir, ventured Gordon. A steam engine, sir. Well, unless one is saved from scrap, there's little hope. But, sir, one has.
Yes, indeed. And thanks to you, Douglas, he is now at our works. Oliver is just what we need for Duck's branch line. Everyone cheered. Now, Oliver and Toad are mended and painted in full Great Western colors. Duck and Oliver are happy on their branch line. The others laughed at first and called it the Little Western. Duck and Oliver were delighted, and so the Little Western it will always be. Oliver was hauled gently to safety.
On a clear day when the sky is blue and there's just enough breeze to blow the clouds away, you can stand on the big hill above the valley and watch Duck and Oliver far below, busily at work on Duck's branch line near the sea. The two engines are very proud of their matching coats of gleaming color. Oliver often talks about the time that Douglas saved him from scrap.
If it wasn't for his help,
Oliver will say,
I might have been caught when I ran away from the scrapyard, and I would never have come to live here on Sir Topham Hatt's railway.
The other engines all wanted to know about Oliver's adventures.
Amazing, remarked Henry. Oliver, said James, has resource.
And sagacity, put in Gordon. What does that mean, whispered Percy. I think, replied Thomas, it's about being clever and wise.
He is, finished Gordon, an example to us all.
I'm sorry to say that Oliver became very puffed up in the smoke box.
Henry says I'm amazing. He's right.
He whistled as he swooshed along the line. One day, Sir Topham Hatt came to see him.
You are doing well. Now you must learn how to look after freight cars.
Every wise engine knows that you cannot trust freight cars. The other engines warned Oliver, but he took no notice.
You think I can't manage, he said huffily. Gordon knows better. He says I'm sagacious.
You may be good gracious or whatever you call it, but cars can be troublesome, and...
Say no more, Duck,
interrupted Donald.
It's a pity, but the wee engine'll just have to learn for himself.
Oliver pulled some loaded cars to a siding and pushed the empties to the chute. Then he came back to take the loaded cars away. But they were comfortable and didn't want to move.
What right has he to poke his funnel in here? We want Duck.
Or Donald.
Or Douglas. Look sharp,
huffed Oliver.
That's not the way to speak, hissed the cars. We'll get even.
Oliver heard nothing. The cars moved smoothly at first, then suddenly Oliver felt them push forward. His driver applied the brakes, but they were useless against the surging cars. On, yelled the cars. Oliver fought hard, but still they forced him on and on. At last, the cars grew tired.
I'm winning,
gasped Oliver. But it was too late. Oliver lay bruised and bemused, bunker down in the turntable well. Duck surveyed the damage.
Hello, Oliver. Are you being a good gracious engine? Beg pardon, but we really don't like this sort of surprise. Donald and Douglas will miss their turntable until it is mended.
That evening, Oliver was hauled gently to safety.
I'm sorry, sir,
he said to Sir Topham Hatt.
I should have listened to Duck's advice. I don't feel good gracious or whatever it is. I just feel silly. Well, Oliver,
replied Sir Topham Hatt,
now you know the damage cars can do. Yes, I do, sir. I look like a load of scrap iron. Oh, I don't think so, laughed Sir Topham Hatt. But you do need to go to the works to be mended.
The other engines now felt sorry for Oliver.
The branch line won't be the same without you, whistled Duck. Come back soon.
A few days later, Oliver did come back. His coat gleamed brighter than ever. He was a wiser engine, too, and never made a mistake about cars again.
Take care with Mr. Oliver. If you play tricks on him, you'll never be the same car again. Oliver had been to the works to be mended. Some troublesome cars tricked him, and the Great Western engine fell into the turntable well. Now Oliver was as good as new, but he was still worried about cars. I'd rather not use them, he puffed to himself. but the cars sang songs rude and loud. Scruffy, their leader, led the chorus.
Oliver's no use at all, thinks he's very clever, says that he can manage us, that's the best joke ever. When he orders us about with the greatest folly, we just push him down the well. Pop goes old Ollie.
Thomas, Duck, and Percy were shocked. Be quiet, they ordered. But they couldn't be everywhere, and everywhere they weren't, the cars began again.
Oliver's no use at all, thinks he's very clever, says that he can manage us, that's the best joke ever.
At last, the engines gave up. We're sorry, Oliver, they said. It's really my fault, said Oliver sadly. I shouldn't have fallen in the turntable well. Toad, the brake van, felt sorry for Oliver, too. Next morning, he spoke to Douglas.
I'm worried, Mr. Douglas. This disrespect for engines, where's it going to end?
Who knows, sighed Douglas.
I've got a plan, Mr. Douglas. May I stay here today and help Mr. Oliver? We are both Great Western and must stand together.
Certainly, Toad, replied Douglas and puffed away. Soon Toad was explaining his plan. Goodness gracious, Toad, I don't think you should suggest such a thing to Oliver. But Oliver interrupted. No, Duck, Toad's right. It's really my fault. I must put this trouble right.
I meant no disrespect, you understand.
Of course not, Toad. Anyway, Driver says the same, and he's arranged it with the station master. Very well, Oliver, conceded Duck, but I must hurry. My passengers will be waiting. Good luck. So long, smiled Oliver bravely, but he felt dreadfully nervous inside. Oliver marshaled the worst cars 2 by 2.
That's the way, Mr. Oliver,
whispered Toad.
And if you leave that Scruffy till last, then you'll have him behind you, and you can bump him if he starts his nonsense. Hold back, whispered Scruffy, and pass the word to the others.
The silly cars giggled. But Oliver knew what to do. There was plenty of sand on the rails and his wheels gripped splendidly. He gave a great heave.
Oh,
groaned Scruffy.
I don't like this.
Go on, yelled Duck. Well done, boy, well done.
Oh,
wailed Scruffy.
I'm coming apart.
And he did. Then there was trouble.
Well, Oliver, so you don't know your own strength, is that it?
No, sir, said Oliver nervously. Sir Topham Hatt inspected Scruffy.
As I thought. Rotten wood, rusty frames. Maybe if we put you back together, you'll earn yourself a better name.
Nowadays, Oliver only takes the cars when the other engines are busy. But they're always quick to warn each other.
Take care with Mr. Oliver. If you play tricks on him, you'll never be the same car again.
Scruffy has learned his lesson and says nothing at all.
But the fun was soon over. A crossing lay ahead and the gates were closed. Toad the brake van was feeling sad. Everywhere he looked, he could see engines and coaches moving steadily forwards. They all looked confident and cheerful. One day, he decided to talk to Oliver, the Great Western engine.
I'm always going backwards, Mr. Oliver. I have forward-thinking views. I could be a leader, if you know what I mean. You can't be a leader without a train to follow. You don't have a train, Gordon said.
Toad felt sadder still. Oliver wanted to help. You're a very useful brake van, Toad. You help me brake, and you keep my freight cars in order when we go down hills.
I know, Mr. Oliver, but it would be so exciting to go forwards for a change instead of always seeing things sliding away from me.
The freight cars were cross with Toad. Who's he to start complaining? He's lucky to be able to look after us. Let's teach him a lesson. The freight cars decided to carry out their plan when they reached Gordon's Hill. When they were nearly at the top, they played their tricks. Ready, steady, go! And they jerked at a coupling, which broke. We're making your wish come true, Toad! Follow the leader, yelled the freight cars. Toad was still in a state of shock, so he didn't know what to think, and he couldn't ask the conductor. He had jumped clear. Faster, faster, as fast as you want, screamed the freight cars. Suddenly, Toad found it fun. But the fun was soon over. A crossing lay ahead and the gates were closed. Toad couldn't stop. Worse still, Toad now realized he was on the wrong track. There ahead was Gordon. The signalman changed the points just in time. On, faster, cried the freight cars. Suddenly, he saw James pulling a long, slow train. Oh my goodness! Help! Save me! A quick-thinking shunter did, just in time. What was that? Exclaimed James. The signalman warned the station master at the next station. There's a runaway coming. We'll send him into the sidings. Help! Help! Called Toad again. Toad saw some buffers. Those'll stop me! But the points to the buffers weren't set. No! I'm back on the main line! Meanwhile, Oliver was racing to the rescue. I must catch Toad. I must! Toad sped past Henry. More danger lay ahead. Men were working on a bridge, but they had been warned about the runaway Toad and his freight cars. They diverted him onto old sidings, straight into a muddy pool. Stopped at last. Oliver arrived, and when he saw Toad, he could only smile. A pond is the only place for a toad, I suppose. That night, Toad spoke to Oliver. I'm sorry, Mr. Oliver, if I caused you any embarrassment. That's all right, Toad. So what do you think of going forwards? It was fun, decided Toad, but from now on I'll be happy to look forward to the future, busy going backwards, so to speak.
At the junction, Duck told Oliver all about him. It was a special holiday on the island of Sodor. Bertie the bus was working harder than ever before. All the engines were busy too. Duck was waiting for his next journey. Near him stood a red bus, but he didn't look friendly like Bertie. The bus growled as he gazed at the happy passengers. Stupid nonsense, he grumbled. I wouldn't have brought them if I'd known. I'd have had a breakdown or something. I'm glad you didn't, smiled Duck. You'd have spoiled their fun. Bah! Enjoyment is all you engines live for. One day railways will be ripped up. Duck felt shocked at such an idea. We have a friend called Bertie, and he's a bus, but he likes the railway. Sometimes he teases us about it, but he'd never want to see it ripped up. Huh, growled the bus. I know Bertie. He's too small in size to be of any use. Duck took no notice. that bus is silly, he thought, as he steamed away. At the junction, Duck told Oliver all about him.
I call him Bulgy,
Chuckled Oliver, and then he puffed happily away. But that afternoon, when the two engines met again, Oliver was no longer laughing.
Bulgy's friend has come, he said. He's rude, too. He's taking Bulgy's passengers home and leaving Bulgy free to steal ours.
But he can't, objected Duck.
Bulgy says he can get them to the big station before us.
Rubbish, replied Duck. It's much farther by road.
Yeah, continued Oliver, but Bulgy says he knows a shortcut.
That evening, the engines were preparing for the homeward rush. Where are the passengers, they wondered.
Look,
Shrilled Oliver.
look at Bulgy. He's a mean scarlet deceiver.
Bulgy was wearing a large sign saying railway bus.
Yeah, boo snubs,
He jeered as he roared away. Come on, puffed Duck to his coaches. Let's see what he's up to. Duck wanted to get back at Bulgy, but he wasn't sure how. Then, in the distance, Duck saw a man waving a red flag. That meant danger. The line here crosses a narrow road, and there was Bulgy, wedged firmly under the bridge. So this was his shortcut, chuckled Duck. He tricked us, shouted Bulgy's passengers. He said he was a railway bus, but he wouldn't accept our return tickets. He wanted us to think railways are no good. Duck's crew examined the bridge. It's risky, but we must help the passengers. Passengers are urgent, agreed Duck. Duck slowly and carefully set off across the bridge. Bulgy wailed as he felt the bridge quiver.
Oh, oh. Stop, he shouted. It might fall on me.
That would serve you right for telling lies, said Duck, but the bridge didn't collapse. Duck made good time, and all the passengers caught their trains. The bridge is now mended, but not, unfortunately, Bulgy and his ways. He never learned sense. He's a hen house now, and his lies can do no harm. The hens never listen to them anyway.
You're quite right, Toad. Oliver and his brake van, Toad, liked working in the big yards, but one morning Toad noticed that Oliver was unhappy. He decided to find out why.
Excuse me, Mr. Oliver. It seems to me that things are not well with you. If you forgive me for mentioning it.
You're quite right, Toad. All I do is shunt these freight cars onto the turntable. I long for a nice run. It's what an engine really needs.
Quite so, Mr. Oliver. May I suggest that you speak to Sir Topham Hatt about your problems?
But Oliver said nothing. He just grew unhappier, and he was rough with the freight cars. You're no good, Oliver. You're dangerous. We want Percy. Percy's far too busy to be bothered with the likes of you. And Oliver bumped the freight cars hard. You silly engine, shouted a workman. It'll take a long time to repair this turntable, which will cause confusion and delay. That night, Sir Topham Hatt arrived. Oliver, you have caused confusion. I thought you could control freight cars. You shall work the mail train for a while. Maybe the night air will clear your smoke box. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, said Oliver sadly. Cheer up, old chap, said his driver. The mail train run is a grand run for a fine engine like you. Oliver smiled, but he still felt he had let everyone down. His driver took them along the coastal run with the mail train. The fresh air couldn't help but brighten Oliver's spirits. They made good speed until it was time to collect some important mail from Harold the helicopter.
Come on, Harold!
At last, Harold landed. Sorry I'm late, Great Western. Had a bit of a problem with one of my arms. Kept letting me down when I was meant to be up. You know how it is. We know that we'll be late for our first run, replied Oliver's driver. Soon they were on their way again. Ahead was a red signal light. Oliver didn't realize that the signalman had dozed off. Oliver whistled several times, but the signal stayed red. There must be something wrong with that signal. We'll go slowly and stop by the signal box, said his driver. But they never reached it. The points before the signal box were switched to an old track. They were going the wrong way. Oliver's fireman was concerned. We need to find a water tower soon. Instead, they saw an old station. Disaster lay ahead. Meanwhile, Sir Topham Hatt was worried.
Oliver has not returned. We'll send out a search party.
Soon he was high in the sky with Harold.
There they are.
It wasn't Oliver's fault, sighed the driver.
I'm aware of that. I'm just glad to see you are all safe.
Then he saw something. It was an empty old house beside the station. He went to inspect it. When he returned, he spoke to Oliver.
You have found another attraction for our island. We'll make this house as good as new, and visitors can have tea and crumpets there.
Sighed Oliver. Getting lost can be interesting, but being found is much nicer. Especially when it makes an engine feel really useful.
Toad's Adventure. Oliver and Toad used to work on the Great Western Railway. Oliver never tired of telling the story of how they first came to the island of Sodor.
And then there was that night of my daring escape from the scrapyard. Oh, what an adventure that was! Unbelievable!
Oh no, Mr. Oliver, I was there too, remember? And I've heard this story before.
Never before has a Great Western engine had such a narrow escape. The moon was full that night, and the wind was rustling in the trees. I weren't scared, though.
Oliver had told Toad the brakeman the same story 100 times. Sometimes Toad wished he'd had his own adventure story to tell, so that he didn't have to listen to Oliver's all the time.
Oh, yes. My escape from that scrapyard was probably the greatest escape anyone's ever had.
At the shunting yard, Oliver was uncoupled from Toad and given some coaches instead.
Bye, Toad. See you later. Nice talking to you.
Toad was happy not to listen to Oliver's stories for a while, but he didn't like the idea of sitting around doing nothing. He wanted an adventure all of his own.
Brake vans. I don't know why I need a brake van at all. I never have accidents.
Please, Mr. James. Hello. Did you say you needed a brake van, sir? Perhaps I could help.
You? What's so special about you?
Ask anyone, sir. I love helping haul coal wagons, and my brakes are strong and... Oh, please, Mr. James.
Oh, all right, all right. Come along, then. I haven't got all day.
So Toad was coupled up to James. He was delighted to be heading off to Vickerstown.
I don't suppose you see splendid engines like me on your little Western line very often?
No, sir.
But did you know I am the brightest red engine on the whole island of Sodor?
Yes, sir. I could see that.
You could travel for miles around and not find a better engine than me.
Do we have to go so fast, Mr. James?
I'm no slow coach. The sooner I get these cars to Vickerstown, the sooner I can get back to pulling coaches.
Please slow down, sir. This is dangerous. Oliver would never go this fast with a full load.
Nonsense! I know what I'm doing. I go this fast all the time.
As they approached Gordon's Hill, James pumped his pistons faster than ever. Toad decided he didn't want an adventure anymore.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear me.
You see, Toad? Nothing slows me down. Oh! Oh, no!
Oh, Mr. James, what was that?
We've hit a branch! Stop the cars!
I'm trying, Mr. James, I'm trying.
Thomas was taking Sir Topham Hatt and Dowager Hat to the mainland to go to the opera.
I used to be quite the singer in my day. Would you like to hear me sing?
Well, perhaps later.
Me, my, moo. Lo, 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 lo.
Cinders and ashes!
Whoa!
Thomas, why have we stopped?
Up ahead, sir!
Look! Thomas, back up! Back up!
Thomas, look out! Percy! Oh no! We're going to have a crash!
Oh, no!
Toad could see that Thomas and Percy didn't have enough time to reverse and clear the line. Toad knew he had to save them all now.
He's going to hit us!
Toad had done it. He'd stopped the coal cars just in time. Everyone was very relieved.
Oh.
Well done, Toad!
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Just doing my job.
Sorry, Thomas, I lost my cars on the hill. Is everyone all right? No, James, everyone is not all right. You have caused confusion and delay. I demand to know how this happened. Well, sir, the thing is, I was going too fast.
There was a fallen branch on the line, sir. It was nobody's fault. It was an accident.
Oh, accident, eh? Well,
Sounds to me rather like this little brake van saved us all from disaster. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I suppose so.
You are a really useful and very brave brake van.
Quite right. Well done, Toad. Carry on, carry on. The opera awaits.
No, 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 no.
Toad was still thinking about what Dowager Hat had said to him. He felt very proud.
You can go a little faster if you like, Mr. James.
Oh, no. This will do, thank you, Toad. Never too slow, never too fast. That's what I always say. Thanks for your help today, Toad.
And thank you very much, sir.
Call me James.
Hello, Mr. Oliver.
Hello, Toad. You'll never believe what happened to me today. Let me tell you all about it.
Actually, Oliver, I think you should ask Toad about the adventure he had today.
You, Toad? You had an adventure?
Well, yes, as it happens. It all started when I was coupled to Mr. James. But he started to go a bit too fast. By the time we reached Gordon's Hill, we were going so fast my wheels were shaking.
Well, that don't sound like much of an adventure, Toad.
But that's not all. That's when we saw a branch had fallen on the line.
No!
Yes! And the thing was, we were going so fast we couldn't stop.
So, what happened next?
That's when it got really scary. James couldn't stop.
And so Toad told everyone about his adventure on the main line.
So I pushed and
Oliver said he could hardly believe it. But Toad said that was okay. He'd tell him the whole story again tomorrow.